an exciting panel on energy, the future of energy, and the main most pressing issues that we have to deal with in order to secure the energy future of Europe and of Poland. And Polish Business Hub provides the platform for this fantastic discussion. It's an amazing initiative, and I'm very happy to be here. And particularly because we have really distinguished speakers joining us today. First off, we have Mr. Witold Literacki, who's the Vice President of the Management Board for Corporate Affairs and First Deputy President of the Management Board at Orlen. Thank you, Mr. Literacki. We have Dr. Adam Sikorski, who's the President of the Management Board at Unimot, leader in fuels in Poland and also a very big player in Europe. We have Mr. Mike Hayes, who's the partner and global head of renewable energy at KPMG Impact in terms of climate change and decarbonization. And that's team you're leading as well at KPMG. Thank you for being here with us. Raphael Schündgen, if I pronounce it correctly, CEO of Hydrogen Advisors and also ex-CTO of Engie, one of the biggest utility companies in Europe, also present in renewable energy, also ex-CEO of Engie China. Thank you very much for being here as well. And Dr. Marcin Kraśniewski, who's assistant professor at the Department of Transition, University of Economics Katowice, and also director at the Polish Industrial Development Agency, Agencja Rozwoju Przemysłu. Thank you for being with us today. So a very big topic that we will be grappling with, energy security. In fact, whenever you talk about energy, you have to deal with three main issues, hence the energy trilemma of security, affordability, and sustainability. And we always kind of try to organize our energy systems taking into account those three different aspects. It's not different in Poland. However, what is very important in Poland is the fact that the whole energy system is ripe for energy transformation, energy transition. While Poland, between 1999, if you look at the primary energy consumption in Poland, it was around 1,200 terawatt hours. In 2019, it was pretty much the same. It's owing to the energy conservation efforts that happened in Poland, but also to a business and economic model where the energy intensity of the economy did not go hand in hand with the economic growth. While Poland pretty much maintained a primary energy consumption between 1990 and 2019, the GDP growth was 28x. And what happened within that time is the slow, let's say, retreat from complete dependence on coal when it comes to heating, when it comes to primarily also electricity generation. What the next stage of Poland growth will look like, that's what we're going to discuss today, and particularly the fact that energy will be an extremely important component of that next chapter of Poland's growth. In order for Poland to adopt the new technologies that Davos as well is all about, AI obviously comes to mind, but also to make sure that we as an economy, as Poland and as European Union remain competitive. So these are all the aspects that we would like to discuss today. And in order for that energy transition to be successful, it is dependent on major players in that space, such as Orlen. Orlen recently announced its new 10-year strategy until 2035, where it has earmarked 90 billion euros, or 380 billion zlotys, into investment in different aspects of its business. And perhaps that's where we should start, because from Poland's perspective and from Europeans' perspective, it is companies that have the capital and have the resources in order to make energy transition happen that will determine the path we take forward. So, Mr. Literacki, on that point, what do you see as the most important change in terms of Orlen's strategy and the most important objectives that you would like to see come to fruition within the next 10 years in terms of investment, in terms of the transformation of the energy system?
Thank you very much for invitation. For this moment, the strategy which we published 2 weeks ago is the most important for us to realize, yes. But the strategy showing in which way we would like to go. We need to know for this moment the history. History was that after the war in Ukraine, we had two sources of the cheap, maybe not cheap, but two sources of energy. From Russia it was crude oil, and from Russia it was gas. Now, after the war, we stopped to import this energy from the east, and now we have to secure the energy for not only Poland, but it's Middle Europe, because we are the leader in Middle Europe. We need to secure for all of us the energy and fulfill all the regulations from EU to deliver the clean energy, green energy. So we are focused on the decarbonization. From this point of view, we are investing in biofuels, in the sun farms, the offshore, for the wind farms, for the nuclear reactors, etc., because the range where we invest is very huge. So this is the reason, because we are trying to diversify our sources, because only the green energy from the sun and wind, it's not enough, as we can see in the Germany. In last week, from the information we know that they started to work with the goal to produce the electricity, and we are trying this transition to make in the way where we will change the goal on the gas. Of course, maybe it's not completely according with the EU legislation, but we see that we need the gas as such a supplement to the clean energy and on the way of the decarbonization. So this is why we are trying to invest in the gas, and the most important, it will be decarbonization in the CCS, so where we will build the storage for the CO2. So this is our strategy for the next 10 years, and it will be the budget. We have about $44 billion for 10 years.
Excellent, thank you very much. You mentioned the parameters within which you operate in Europe, that being EU regulations, and particularly the taxonomy that comes from European institutions, European Commission, and the way that regulations impact investment. How do you want to influence European regulations in a way that benefit your strategy and actually is aligned with your strategy? Is there a particular role for companies like Orlen to feed into what policies are being introduced in Brussels?
Of course, we are trying to discuss. Yes, we have the office in the Brussels where we have the people who every day try to cooperate with the administration in Brussels. But as everybody knows, it's not easy because the Brussels don't want to hear. But we are trying. Every day we are trying to discuss and to show where the regulations are not working or are not on the good way. So our cooperation, but we know, of course, that the legislation to make changes in the EU legislation is not easy. But we understand that now the lights are focused on us, on the Poland, because we have a presidential for half year. So we would like to try to start a discussion and to show the problems with green energy, and only with the green energy, because the targets which are we obliged to deliver, I think it's not easy, and maybe for this moment it is not the right way for the economy in EU.
Understood. Thank you. Michael, you wanted to chip in.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're into the afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. That is a really, really important question, and I can see this is an issue that is central to this debate. So we're here to talk about security. My background, and I've been involved in the renewable energy industry for about 25 years. I can talk about it later. I'm involved in coal to renewables initiatives, and I'm all about the climate and decarbonisation. But I recognise one thing, and that is the world needs energy, and we should never, ever get away from that. If we can't deliver clean energy, it'll come from other sources. That we have to be absolutely clear about, number one. And number two, it has to be affordable. And that's why the security question is so important. We're not going to make progress on the decarbonisation agenda if we do not recognise the fundamental importance of security and affordability, which is why when you talk about the EU taxonomy, I could not agree with you more, because the problem is some of these regulations do not recognise the real world. And that's an example. And I support and endorse the EU taxonomy, but I work with financial institutions, and they're finding they're hindered in financing projects that you have that are brown to green, because you're trying to do the right thing, because you do not meet the exact requirements of the taxonomy. So that is becoming a real problem. And I can tell you, many financial institutions have brilliant investment cases where they want to support transitioning assets, but they cannot do so. And that's why over the past 2 years, a newer concept has emerged, and I'm sure many people are aware of this, and this is the concept of transition finance. So as you know, banks and insurance companies and other investors are encouraged to focus on what are called their financed emissions, to reduce the amount of emissions on their carbon balance sheet. Transition finance says something different. What transition finance says is it is okay if you're an institution to lend or provide equity to high-emitting companies as long as they have a credible transition plan and the money is used towards the transition. And gas is very much part of that transition journey. And what I'm really trying to push is a kind of a broader, more real-world type of thinking, rather than trying to sort of push people down, supporting narrow regulations that do not recognise that companies like yours, you're trying to do the right thing, but you have to face up to realities. So my point really is we cannot let the EU taxonomy just hinder us. And the more we embrace this concept, the more and more institutions are embracing the concept of transition finance.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Raphael?
Yeah, I could rebound on this. I think we need to put a little bit figures into perspective. We tend not to realize that Europe is importing 70% of its energy. So we are energy dependent. The entire question here is, can we reduce this dependency, and can we transition towards greener sources? And that means producing at home on the European continent. Just to give some figures at a European level, if we look at the primary energy mix, it's about 1/3 oil, 25% natural gas, 13% coal, 10% nuclear, and then you have renewables, 18%. If you look at Poland, you have slight difference. You have 10%. You don't have the nuclear, it's 0. And you have actually 10% more coal, 20% more coal, which is 10% more or less gas than other countries, and the 10% of nuclear that you don't have. And you are heading in that direction, because you say we need to have more based gas generation. You just mentioned it. And Poland, as everybody knows, is also going in the direction of nuclear. But then comes the question of how do we decarbonize, and the hydrogen equation behind, and the derivatives. And here I cannot concur more than with my friend from Holland. The current regulatory framework on hydrogen is killing the development of projects in Europe. Okay, it is extremely detailed, and basically it has 3 principles, which is one, you need to have new additional capacities. They need to be collocated. So you need to prove that any time you produce green hydrogen, it needs be from a green electrons that is collocated geographically and also in a temporally correlation, which is basically within the given day. I explained to you what it means because the Americans have copied. Last World Congress, US roundtable, a guy from Seattle shows up and say, hello, I'm Seattle. We have copied the EU regulatory framework. What do you think about our 3 principles? There are 3 mistakes. Everybody laughs. Say, I will explain. I live in Seattle. We have big hydro dams. In wintertime, there's water in the dam. It's super plenty of water, too much water to be used. So we open the bypass valve. So it means they have Niagara Falls. The additionality principle, first principle of Europe, means that you need to have new capacities. You cannot use the existing one. So the guy sits in front of the dam. Since the water falling, the Niagara Falls cannot take the energy to produce hydrogen, cannot do it. And he's been asked to do new solar or new wind capacities and connect them to the grid. But that is not possible because the grid is super old and it takes 10 years to revamp it. Okay, so it's basically I can do nothing. And I'm really, really pissed that we copied the regulatory framework. I take that example because for me it's the best way to explain how the current regulatory framework we have in Europe is killing us, also killing others. We'll see if everything's changed, but we will not be less energy dependent and go greener if we do not acknowledge that we need to be down to basics. And Mr. Trump is down to basics. Change those fucking rules, sorry for the word. We will be dying if we don't do it. And it's not me saying it, the CEO of Hydrogen Europe, the association, I used to be the chairman, in November, last November, on the stage, in front of all the ambassadors of all other countries and ministers, said, please, Mrs. von der Leyen, don't kill the nation hydrogen economy in Europe. I stop here. I admire the effort of Poland. You have the presidency. Let's not despair. Have a look at it. And if we don't do that, we won't have also the data center that all need to show that they are using green energy. And it can only be in green electrons. Electricity is only 20% of the energy we use is in the form of electricity. 80% is gas, liquid, and solid. So we need to go for green hydrogen next to it. I stop here.
Thank you very much, Rafi. That's actually a very good segue to Dr. Sikorski and the Unimod, because that liquids is what you're obviously experts in. And part of the theme here is that while we are going towards decarbonization, we will need transition fuels, and definitely in order to grow, which is the theme of this conversation, you need abundant supplies of affordable fuels. And without that, we won't be able to sustain and grow as an economy. So I'd like to ask from Unimod's perspective, we spoke briefly about the impact of obviously the war in Ukraine, Russia's aggression against Ukraine it had on the prices of fuels and on the change of tack in terms of diversification of the supply chains and of sources of fuels. What do you have you seen as the biggest kind of game changers when it comes to your end of the energy system, which is, as we explained, is very, very important as well?
Yeah, so what's happened, I fully agree because there are the facts. Europe is still dependent to import of the energy sources. So it doesn't matter we are talking about the Russia, Middle East or United States, we are still importing energy. It means crude oil, diesel or natural gas or LNG in the facts of LNG. What's happened after the war? The Russia is not anymore dominant player, especially with the crude oil. There is some exemptions, still some supply of the crude to Hungary and Czech Republic, but probably it will stop this year. Natural gas a little bit. No any more barrels of the Russian diesel that, for example, Poland, Russia was securing 80% or 85% of the Polish demand for the diesel. What's happened after the war? Unfortunately, everybody knows that the prices spiked, go up. The premiums for supply to Poland from different alternative sources go up, the premiums go up to 30, 25 US dollars, which is converting to 5, 6 euro cents, 7 euro cents on the gas station, because this is the, I think, the message for the consumers. They were definitely disappointed of that. But the fact for 25, which we are extremely happy and lucky, due to the logistic optimization, there is no any impact of the change of the logistic supplies. The dominant supplier, for example, for the diesel, because Europe is very, very big importer of the diesel fuel, is the United States. More than 50% is coming from United States. The prices, the premiums we are now facing is the same like before the Russian the war in Ukraine. So this is very, very, very good message. So sometimes I can hear the questions why we are not dealing anymore with Russia, why we are not buying cheap Russian energy sources. They never been the cheap Russian sources. They were always market price. The Russians, they were always placing their barrels in Europe, natural gas, crude and diesel on the market price. Of course, there were some premiums with the logistic, because of the logistic, but it was not the huge premiums. So in this case, I'm extremely happy. We are well secure as a Europe now. The alternative supply from US, from Middle East, is here on place, but it doesn't change the main topic. 70% of the energy we need to import in Europe. So then if we are going to the decarbonization, definitely it creates a lot of space, the room for initiatives in Europe to be less energy dependence.
And do you see a change of tide in terms of more domestic production in upstream oil and gas? And is that where is there climate is in a way changing?
European regulation almost kill European upstream business when we are talking about, for example, natural gas. Yeah, to be honest, yeah, the North Sea, what's happened in the UK. I don't want to go in the details, but I think this is one of the area where we can do a lot. Yeah, I think the problem with the natural gas we have, I don't like this quote transition fuel. What does it mean transition? Why is transition? We are talking about the net zero in 2050, not zero emission 2050. So why natural gas? I was looking for the Chinese mix in China, what they predict, how they want to build the energy mix 2050, 2060 in China. Natural gas is still there. It's clean energy, to be honest, less emitted than the crude, for example. So why we completely stopped discussing about the, for example, production and the upstream business? I know we have some opportunities in Poland. The Ukrainians are quite good. I have a lot of information from Ukraine that upstream business is really growing in the Ukraine with the new seismic, with the new technology. They are coming back to the old fields from the Soviet era, I can say, where they are looking for the gas, and gas is there in this case. I think this is one of the ways. So we as a Unimod, we are really looking forward as well for the gas, because we believe the gas will stay for the much longer than we believe, because otherwise base load, of course, nuclear, but how much? 10%? How we can go to 15? How much money we need to spend? So natural gas is I think, one of the important.
Just one follow-up, because I just came back from a session about sustainable aviation fuels. Where do you stand on synthetic fuels and the future of that industry in Europe?
This is one of the example. We are active. Orlen is, of course, main player in the SAF fuel and the aviation fuel. Is, sorry to say again, same absurd from the European Union. What we are doing now, we have a 2% SAF regulation. What we are doing is a paper trading. Is a paper trading. We call this paper trading. We are just looking how to find this 2%, how to fulfill this regulation with the paper trading between the players. So 2%, what kind of the impacts? The difference in the price, 1 metric tons of the jet fuel and the SAF is $1,800 US. How many of us, if we have the option to decarbonize our tickets when we are buying the tickets, which cost 10 euro, 15 euro, if you try to deal with LOT and Lufthansa, you have the options that you can decarbonize. customers are not ready to do that, and again is a paper trading that make a lot of complication. So we are now facing this in our business. So let's imagine that we need to buy the jet fuel, move 98% of the volume to one of the depot in Poland, to blend with the 2% of SAF, and then move these barrels to the airport. Logistic. The carbon emission in the logistic process of the moving this barrel. This is absurd, I can say. And I hope that the Europe will start to discuss the politicians with the science about the technologies, what is the affordable technology, and with the business, because there is a lot of nonsense. Yeah? If you look for the full supply chain, what's going on, there is no decarbonization. The carbon emission is going up because of these absurds.
So what we're hearing is a lot of food for thought when it comes to EU regulations and their ability to actually spur the growth that we've been talking about, and also secure the energy supplies for the future growth of the economies. And we unfortunately don't have anyone from the European Commission at this particular panel, but we do have Dr. Kraśniewski, who's representing the Polish Industrial Development Agency, which does deal with public policy and industrial policy of Poland, and therefore is well attuned to the, I imagine, regulations in the energy space. From perspective of ARP, what are your priorities to, on the one hand, spur investment in the energy system, but also in different industries, and on the other hand, to make sure that that investment does meet the private investor test and is on a competitive footing with other countries in Europe and outside of the EU as well?
Thank you for ask. It's an honor for me to be participant in this prestigious panel. It's my first panel in Davos. Thank you very much for invitation. I work at the University of Economics and Polish company Industrial Development Agency. As a representative of this company, I would like to briefly introduce my organization. ARP was established as a part of Poland's political and economic transformation after 1989. At first, its main goals was to restructure Polish interpretations and provide financing support for interpretation. Today, my agency, my company continues this role. However, our strategies has challenged our time. It now focus on industrial and energy transformation and energy security. It's very important for the strategies. The Industrial Development Agency is actively involved in energy and industrial transition. We are preparing energy products and programs to supporting Polish interpretation, enjoying in the local content, which is a major challenges for Poland's industrial transformation. For example, we are helping Polish companies get ready to join the local content for large energy project. For example, build a nuclear power plant. For my company is very important social aspects of Poland's energy is very important. Based my role of company, I work at the university in Katowice. Katowice is a main city on Silesia. This gives me perspective on Silesia, Poland's most populated region and industry region, which needs transformation. The energy transformation in Silesia highlights just transition. To support this, the Polish government has worked to implement implemented a social contract with miners to manage to gradual close of coal mines. This process is being created out in close cooperating with the European Commission. Miners are being shut down step by step to avoid mass layoffs. One of administrative step to support this transformation in Silesia was the create of Minister of Industry in Katowice. This is only minister located outside Warsaw, showing the government's dedicated to decision-making relation to the energy transition, especially in Silesia. So I think it's social infrastructure and new programs for Polish interpretations.
And in terms of the RPS priorities, do you focus both, and we're talking about the transition and how transition finance should acknowledge that coal to gas or coal to nuclear is an investment worth making for companies that in industries that might not be very decarbonized at the moment, but they're going on the right direction. Is those particular industrial policies, coal to gas and coal to nuclear, part of your remit and part of your investment profile?
My company prepare a new program for nuclear sector and hydrogen sector. It's very important in policy strategy of my company. My company prepare, for example, project hydrogen plan in Silesia. My company is also support this project. This project is support for the region industrial transformation. The plan will be built on post-mined land using existing infrastructure and addressing environmentally changes.
Thank you very much. Rafael, you wanted to
Yeah,
add
I
something?
think it's very important to hear because you represent somehow the state. So nuclear right now, what is the question around nuclear investment? There has been a revival at COP28 in Dubai around nuclear. A lot of investment fund looking at it again. You probably have seen that Oliver Stone, he was by the way in Davos just before COP last year, showing his film on nuclear. He's going to do a second one. So you have people, you have a wave worldwide and also in the US of people saying, well, we cannot do without nuclear and let's go and invest it. And it's quite likely that it's not going to be affected by the new Trump administration. Now, it's great that you in Poland will introduce nuclear in your mix, but you have the energy presidency right now of Europe. And as we talk, everybody's waiting for the last piece of the hydrogen regulation, which is the second delegated act. It's a bit technical. I told you already about the first one. The second one is about low carbon. The first one is about renewable carbon. So low carbon, any energy that does emit a little bit of CO2 or no CO2, nuclear emits zero CO2, is subject to rules to be used to produce hydrogen. And guess what? The European Commission in the two drafts have written, oh, nuclear is super, super complicated. Oh, we need a deep dive assessment, and we are in 224. We're going to put the text in 225. We need minimum 4 years deep thinking, and we're going to give you an idea by 2028 about whether we can use nuclear as a source to produce hydrogen. Okay, this is completely contrary to the EU Treaty on Euratom. This is completely contrary to the approach of tech neutrality of Europe. It's crazy. And you should not forget that 2 weeks ago, before Trump came in, they just approved the production of low carbon hydrogen in the US from nuclear. So in copying the EU mix, that mistake, potential mistake Europe is going to make, they didn't copy. So the question is really now for you, having the EU presidency, looking also at the fact that Mr. Habeck, Minister of Economy, of Germany 2 months ago said, the regulatory framework is probably a mistake, we should change it. It was escalated to Mr. Scholz level, so saying the same. It was created under German presidency, and they pushed for it. Good to see that 6 years down the road, they say, we have a mistake, we should change it. It would be good that you, under Polish presidency, get Europe to recognize that what they produced 4 years ago, as an ask of different countries, should change, because people from countries realize, no, we made a mistake, so it's time for Europe to make that mistake. But unless your presidency doesn't show the direction, we're going to stay. And I see people smiling here. We need to get this text straightened up and stop, doing crazy politics about energy equations, because that is not going to help Europe and Europe's security. And Europe's security is also key to the world. We need to have a stable world. And right now we're going straight into the wall and probably going to have one of the most expensive energy in the world. Yes. And that's going to kill the European industry.
Definitely the theme, again, of this conversation is that we need technology neutrality, and nuclear by far should be part of the mix. We've seen in terms of European Commission, which is relevant for first Polish large-scale nuclear build, that has applied for state aid approval for the CFD regime. We've seen in Czech Republic, the Dukovany 2 power plant has received a positive decision from the European Commission, but with so many, I would say, relevant constraints, that the question becomes to what extent it will be a viable, bankable project, because still in European Commission's mind, nuclear should not displace renewables, because renewables have priority access to the grid. And question becomes, how can you secure investments in nuclear as a baseload source of power, where it essentially is being not on the level playing field when it comes to renewables, and a system where you need the baseload, and renewables, until battery storage is very much more mature, is able to provide. But perhaps, Michael, you disagree with me on that point.
I actually want to add to this discussion, completely agree. We're not talking about the elephant in the room. Go outside onto the street. What do you hear up and down the street? AI. Right? Now, and people talk about AI, and I could go on all day about the crazy narrative about emissions from AI. But I think Europe needs to get real. Overnight, I think most of you will have seen Donald Trump announced the $500 billion Stargate project, I think he called it. On what's going to happen is Europe needs to be part of the AI revolution. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose out. And one of the single biggest issues is A, access to energy, and B, clean energy. And I've been attending loads of sessions, and I've met all the big tech companies here during the week. They are saying nuclear is an baseload, yes, but one of the more fundamental part of the solution. Plus, and they need green power, and they're now thinking. And I'm based in Ireland, and we've lived off bringing technology companies into Ireland using low tax rates. I'm going to be saying to my own government, that day is gone. If we're going to attract this business in the future, and this is the message that's coming to me, we need to be able to provide the clean energy sources. Now, I want to go further. Ultimately, and the European regulations are a mess, but this is about a value proposition. Excuse me. AI is now being accepted as a way, and people may agree or disagree, but certainly this is the narrative, and I think I believe it from what I'm seeing. AI is going to improve the way we do business and create real economic value. So therefore, we need to, if we're going to capture that value, we need to provide the power, the energy, the electricity to source all of that. And what I'm starting to detect what's happening is governments are saying, hang on a second, if we're not careful, we're going to lose out. So if I go back to just renewables, first of all, wind and solar, the world made a commitment to treble renewable energy in COP28. Absolute rubbish. It was never, ever going to happen. And that was before AI, because of the lack of policy around permitting and grid and everything else. So AI is changing that equation. It is now putting pressure on governments to really ramp up their clean energy policies. And what's been happening, and as you say, it started at COP28, but now nuclear has very much become part of this data center AI discussion as well. So this session is about security, but all of these things are interlinked. So I actually think Europe needs to wake up, and I'm seeing evidence that at a very early stage, and even in my own country, we're going to introduce new legislation to facilitate off-grid energy/data center campuses. So things have to change, and I think nuclear is definitely going to be part of the future, whether it's to create green hydrogen or anything else.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael. Before we wrap up, I'd like to take 2 questions from the audience. So if you have any questions in mind, just think about them for a second, and I'll come back to you in a moment. But I wanted to come back to Mr. Literacki, because if you look at the ordnance strategy...
I would like something to say about the Brussels, yes, and because I heard in discussions we tried, of course, to speak about the changes and deeper changes in the legislation, like RED 3 and ETS 2, but the administration told me, wait a second, we have a new commission, give them the chance, maybe they will change, we will see how open they are. But I think we can't wait, yes, we can't wait. We will invest now in the right energy sources or not. And this is a problem, because every half year, it's a loss for economy in EU. Every time I'm hearing from the business in EU that give us the cheap energy, we will do the rest. And this is the sentence which I keep all the time. Give us cheap energy, we will do the rest. And we will still great again.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add something, Dr. Sikorski?
I believe what Europe needs, maybe I'm a dreamer, but I always try to be positive. I think there is one evidence that we have a state-of-art technology in Europe, which is in the daily use, is the airplanes, is the Airbus project, 70s, end of 60s. And we did it. Poland was outside of this project, I can say. So it means we have a capability to do something similar. Energy in energy sectors, science, technology, business, and Airbus is now, aviation is my hobby, is a #1 product worldwide. Is much, much better than Boeing. Yeah? Maybe somebody can claim that, but definitely of that. So we know how to do that, and our fathers, because it was earlier generation, they cooperate together, few countries, made the best product worldwide. With the energy sector, with the challenges we have, we need very close cooperation of the science, the different locations, institutes, business, including the finance institution, because they are most important part of the story. They have to finance that, and of course they still finance 60-70% of the equity, but 30% is coming from our own equity. We need to believe as well. So again, I definitely believe, and I think this is very important message as well for the Polish presidency. Try to make the brainstorms on the European level, how to work together, how to tackle this together, because separately it's not possible. We'll not do that. We'll not achieve it. We don't have a chance.
30-second remark?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm Belgian. In what struck me when I was younger is, and when I looked at energy for the first time, is that Belgium has a nuclear base, as you may know, and it was built within 10 years, from scratch within 10 years. Because at a certain point it was decided there is a need for cheap power in the country for the industrial base. And actually the tech comes from Westinghouse that at that time didn't use it. And it was brought tech license and it started in Europe before they would do Westinghouse nuclear plants based on it. So it can be done in a very short period of time. It just needs clear sight and drive.
Absolutely. Right, we had a question here. Is there another question? Just I'll give you in a second. If you... Number 2. Just briefly introduce yourself and say which panelist you'd like to ask the question to.
Sure. So my name is Ville Konsola. I used to work at Glencore. And my question is to any one of you. So in Europe, we have now forgotten how to make nuclear power plants, so we no longer can make them in 10 years. And Germany's most important energy source is Polish brown coal. So where do you think that relationship is evolving?
First, I would not agree with you that we have forgotten how to do them. That's our first statement. It has taken more time to do the latest nuclear plants, but there is spread out knowledge and cooperation. When you come to the equation in Germany, yes, there's brown coal getting developed. Well, I may refer you to the comments made by the Swedish energy minister just around Christmas. There was publicly commenting on the choices made by Germany because they had a lack of power, and so they were pumping power from the Swedish grid, where you have a history of very low energy prices. Suddenly people have seen spikes, and she commented and say, every country in Europe is free to choose their own energy strategy, but not at the cost of devastating effects. It's not exactly the word she used, but that was the meaning of devastating effects to the neighbors. Because when you don't have a stable power base, you just import from the neighbors. So we'll see how it goes, but it would be good that we let nuclear be part of the energy mix of Europe, and we stop. I'm completely independent, so I can say what I want. The silly games and the silly political games, including influence on the Commission. And I'm not pointing to any country, but the Commission should be free to keep nuclear where it needs to be, especially when we have now noticed that there is a revival of it and it's going big in the US, and behind there is the AI revolution, which is the #1 topic here.
And I fully agree. We not lose the competence to be, technology doesn't change as much since 16, 17, something like that. What there is a lack in Europe, this is the supply chain. Here is a huge challenge, supply chain to build the new nuclear plants. But how much it can take to rebuild this? 2-3 years. Let's see if there is a war, if there is a needs of the supply, the arm equipment. Yeah, second war. Yeah, 2-3 years. If there is a political decision, if there is a money.
It's a vivid industry. Look at China. They are putting on the grid every couple of months a new reactor. It's not at all a dead industry. Not at all.
Thank you very much. There was a second question. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Bart Duczynski from Preventus Renewables. I'd love to ask a question to Mr. Schoentegens. Excuse me for Schengen. And maybe anybody else who wants to chip in, because it's quite interesting to listen to all of you gents talk about essentially complaining about the way that the inefficiencies within the EU and the regulations in the EU, number one, and then saying like, well, the US has got cheap gas, and China is building a nuclear reactor every month. So there are two different dynamics. China's building new nuclear reactors every month because it's got very much relaxed and quicker permitting rules than European Union, and the US has got cheap gas because it's got cheap gas. So what is the solution in your view to cheap power prices in Europe? Because we have a situation where we have a certain fuel mix which is dotted around the EU. We've got nuclear, which is already operational, so the short-run marginal cost in France is marginal. We've got Scandinavian regions which has lots and lots of renewables, and therefore the marginal cost and the power prices are indeed visibly lower in the Nordics. And then we've got different fuel mixes in Poland, Germany. Now, so what needs to happen? The nuclear in the UK has been being built for the last 15 years, and it's going to have a huge CFD. Polish nuclear hasn't even gotten a CFD, and we don't know how long it's going to take to build. Certainly a lot longer than in China. Offshore wind, where the auctions have had too low strike prices, didn't achieve any bids, or even in fact. Literally nobody bid in the last Danish auction because there was overcapacity in the market. So what's the solution? To incentivize investment, but to bring the power prices, not forgetting CBAM, of course, which is also going to penalize anybody coming into Europe.
So 2 comments in reply to a question. First, we should not forget in the US and in China how much investment has gone to renewable. So we cannot single out China nuclear, US nuclear. both continents, because they're continents equivalent to Europe, are going big when it comes to new renewable or low carbon technology. And we're gonna be able for China to rely on their technology. And by the way, if you look at the comments made by the Commission, they need to take into account that they need to integrate a little bit of Chinese tech into the electrolyzers. There was a big debate over the past month. That's the first element. The second element is we have seen with the Ukrainian crisis how the European Commission and member states have been able to react very quickly on setting up a war approach when it comes to changing suppliers, where a lot of really experienced people in the energy field from major energy companies have toured the world, activated their contact in order to replenish the gas storages of Europe and make sure that we would, as quickly as possible, be able to face. And we have seen now the effect. It has been amply commented. You are absolutely right to say that we have renewable in the Nordics and renewable in the extreme of Europe, and that we have a number of capacities, and we shouldn't be complaining too much. But what is preventing, we have a European market, and in the way Europe regulates, it's killing everything that is just the market, okay? In other words, when I explain on the hydrogen equation, the fact that you need to have local, geographical, correlation, additionality, all this nonsense. You know, you just need to have an open market and have the capacity. If you want to buy from Finland, because it's cheap power, just buy it over the grid. Okay, if you want to transfer carbon credits from one place to the other one, do it. You have constraints in all directions, and you have also, sorry to say, a certain number of a green electron Taliban approach, which is detrimental to the fact that, sorry, but the energy mix of Europe is 70% based on solid, liquids, and gases. Power is only 20%. So it's cool, right now we have 50% of the power in Europe, which is renewable based, and 25% nuclear, okay? And the rest is fossil based. But having a view which is to decarbonize the grid, fantastic, but we are not going to decarbonize the solid, liquid, and gases via electrification. And there are plenty of uses behind which are transport and industry. So let's stop having this green electron Taliban approach. We need to stop having this, because we don't look at the equation. And if you listen to politicians that are talking about energy, they only tell you about solar panels, electrons, mobility car, electricity, electricity, electricity. They forget also that they import 70%. They forget that right now, if you look out for the hydrogen strategy, Mrs. von der Leyen is walking across the planet with an open check, making check, buying, 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 buying. When are we going to be able to produce? Okay. Last but not least, there were some initiatives during the crisis of new way to regulate the energy market. Look at Spain, some other countries did also interesting things. There's been a debate on should we regulate in a different way. It's, you know, the price of the last activated unit, which is making crazy profits for some players. It's super hard to change the way we have set up the market, because everybody's yelling whatever we do. First of all, the NGOs and the Commission listen also to NGOs, so we need also to take that into account. Okay, so those are a certain number of elements, I believe, in Europe, but first and foremost, let's have a pragmatic approach that we do not have, and let's be technology neutral, and let's look at this with open eyes. And it's a war. We are in a kind of fragmented world, so we need to look at it like we have friends, but friendship will change and evolve.
Thank you very much. One last question very quickly.
Thank you so much. Janusz Kizinevich, Citigroup, London. Actually, as a risk analyst, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really liked what Dr. Adam Sikorsky mentioned about how to diversify our supply chain, especially taking into account Russia, because when we speak about security, first of all, we have to speak also about Russia. So somehow Europe still depends on Russia gas, and I just checked what Politico wrote a few days ago, that France, Spain, Greece, and other EU countries, they still import a lot, and it actually reach high in 2024. So the question is, do you believe that it's possible to have to work and finalize one approach, one common approach in EU on Russian oil and gas, or again, separate countries will be looking for separate solutions, and especially Germany and other will be looking how to get back to Russia, how to rebuild connectivity with Russia, and yeah. Thank you.
I believe there is one approach. This is what you are mentioning about the supply to natural gas from Russia. I consider this more like pragmatic than politic. So I understand there is some challenges in some countries to switch immediately to like Hungary, for example, Slovakia, the friendship pipeline, the crude oil, the Trieste pipeline was not ready to fit the refineries in Hungary, this one. So I would say, I believe 80% is a pragmatic approach, and it is coming. There is no good news for Russia in the future. There is more natural gas worldwide. There is more LNG capacity coming in the next 3-4 years. Russia lose the best customer, European Union. It was the biggest and the best customers paying the premiums for the Russia. So they made huge mistakes, I believe, from the business perspective. I'm even not talking about the political perspective. They made this topic political. The Russians made this topic of the energy politicals. Even the rhetorics was, this is pure business, we are reliable supplier. Now we understand not. It was a part of the politics. And we don't want to have this topic, the politics. So I believe in the next 3-4 years, there will be no Russian gas. Would I convince the politicians in Brussels to stop immediately? Let's be pragmatics. We have a lot of challenges. We are democratic countries. We have the elections in some countries. This is very hot political topic. So step by step, pragmatic approach, and the Russian gas will disappear from Europe soon.
Excellent. We've reached the top of the hour almost. We've obviously discussed long-term strategies, long-term planning, how to restructure our energy system, but also the importance of speed. Speed in terms of change of the regulatory environment and certain approaches towards particular technologies across the energy spectrum. And with that in mind, I'll give an opportunity for each of you just to say within one word or one very short sentence, if you were to come to Davos next year, hopefully to Polish Business Hub, even bigger and better than this year, what would you like to see change or happen within the next 12 months from the point of view of what we've just discussed?
Discussing about we need more energy, electricity and energy generation in Europe because to fit AI demand. But then we are not talking about the clean and cheap because it's not possible. It's as clean as possible, but cheap.
I would like to see nuclear being a mainstream topic at Davos next year, and I think it's going to happen.
Less penalties in legislation in the carbonization, more premiums for the business.
I would like to see the effects of a successful Polish presidency bringing back Europe to some basics and being pragmatic.
I think change European Union regulation for energy sector, especially gas.
Excellent. And hopefully this will all happen in the next 3 months when we come back to Davos 2026. But for now, thank you very much. It was a fantastic discussion. Please, round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.